Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Education and Skills Service Transformation Committee of the 23rd of July 2025. Welcome everyone in the room and everyone online. I'm going to dive straight into the agenda. Number one, apologies for absence. Do we have any, Gareth?
I've had none, Chair.
Okay, no apologies for absence. Secondly, disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest. Do we have any there? Nope. Third, minutes of the last meeting, and I think we've got a few pages to have a quick look at. Page number 1 and page number 2. Are you all content for me to sign them as a true record of that meeting? Thank you, Lyndon. Thank you, Bev. Excellent. So we fly straight into item number 4, which is food in schools, and we will have all had a report sent from Kelly in our pack when it was distributed last week. So who shall I pass on to? Who wants to kick this one off? Helen, do you want to start off, or Robert? Or are we diving straight to Kelly?
Happy just to say a couple of words,
Okay,
Chair.
thanks, Helen.
So obviously really pleased with the report that Kelly has written, just to kickstart some discussions within this committee around how we change the landscape in terms of the food offer, the catering offer in our schools. There are a lot of changes that have been imposed on us as a catering service. They've been itemised in today's report that Kelly will take us through. But I think it's a golden opportunity for us to capitalise on some of those changes and foreseeable changes that are coming our way from Welsh Government's perspective, but also to communicate with our stakeholders on what we're trying to achieve and how we're trying to improve service delivery.
That's lovely. Thanks, Helen. It was a bit remiss of me, really. We've got 2 new people who are attending this committee for the first time. Can I ask you just to say who you are and what you do for me, please? Thank you.
Oh, right, okay. I'm the team manager for education, catering and cleaning.
Yeah.
My name's Monica Richards and I'm the catering operations manager.
Lovely. Thank you very much, both. So over to Kelly.
Yes, thanks. So just to take you through the report, we met in June and we agreed that we would have 3 reports. This is the first of 3. So I'm giving you some context today. The second report I thought could give an update on the things that we actually agree to move forward from today, and then we can look at a third report then that will be sort of the sort of draft statement or whatever we decide we're going to call it on food in Swansea. So just looking at the context then paragraph 5. Schools are offered a service level agreement each year for the catering service, so they decide if they want to buy that back or if they want to go elsewhere. There are only 2 secondary schools that don't buy back into the council service, so that's Alpha and Morris and some of our bigger secondary schools, which both provide an in-house offer, but the rest of the schools do buy back into our offer. Just outlining in paragraph 6 the number of meals that are provided per day. It is substantial, 12,000 meals a day for primary and nearly 7,000 in secondary. And on top of that, we have that breakfast or mid-morning option in the secondary schools and the free breakfast club for primary schools. For all of our primary schools. The service as well, is a big service for the council, employing around 550 members of frontline staff in those kitchens in our schools. And schools then on top of that provide their own lunchtime and breakfast club supervision. So Section 8, as Helen mentioned, there's been a lot of changes that have been imposed in the main on the service recently, which is why we've brought this forward as a topic for SCC. One of them being the first major development, universal free school meals. That was a Welsh Government initiative. We did roll that out from September 2024. So now all our primary schools do offer that free service. It has increased the number of meals that we're providing by about 1/3 overall. So it has made a number of changes and challenges. For example, we're picking up that those who were previously entitled to a free school meal and may not have taken it up are now taking it up because that sort of stigma has been removed. We have had to look at our options. We do provide 2 options with a less labour intensive menu at the moment, one meat option and a vegetarian option per day. So there's a 3 weekly menu there. We have had some feedback, obviously, because we are focusing on those 2 options now, whereas previously some of the schools were able to offer a little bit more of a flexible menu now, and we are, sticking to what we should be offering. So it is those 2 options there. Under paragraph 12, new waste regulations have come into play in 2024. The waste bins in the schools are shared usually between the catering service and the school. So we've had a little bit of sort of organisation to do to try and get that new regulation to work, because there is a charge now for the waste collection. So it has mean we've had to look a little bit differently at how we operate there. Particularly as what we found is that some of the learners will come in primary schools with a packed lunch and take up their free school meal offer. So it has created perhaps a little bit more waste than we'd like from that offer. I don't know whether Alison might want to come in and just give a little bit more information on what we've done so far about the packaging and waste.
Yeah, I think in the primary sector, for example, we were serving an individual yoghurt. So we've had to stop that, and we now use a gallon provision and then we dish it into a proper dish, if you like, to reduce the plastics. Other than that, in the primary sector, there's very little packaging really, and it's more in the secondary area that we have a lot of packaging issues. And in our comps, we've seen a big change now, and stopping using the packaging and putting onto more of a plated service. So, and that comes with its own problems, obviously, but in this business that we're in of that age group wanting pick up and go really rather than to sit down. So that causes another issue, and it's difficult in our dining spaces to accommodate that sometimes in the space of the time that we have to serve lunch.
So the Welsh Government is also out under paragraph 13 for a consultation on new health eating regulations. So the team already have to adhere to the existing health eating regulations there when looking at the menu. And I know Monica works really closely with nutritionalists as well to make sure everything's nice and balanced for the offer that we give. If this consultation progresses, we assume it will, that it will require a change to the menu. So we will need some, particularly for special diet, I think we need a little bit more clarity on that going forward. I don't know, Alison, again, whether perhaps you might want to just say a little bit more about what the changes are likely to be for health eating under the consultation.
Yeah, there's presently the new healthy regs are out for consultation, which is ending on the 29th of July. And we're presently bringing our responses really to that to Welsh Government which is next week now. As regards a lot of things that are on these regulations, Swansea do comply with. So, for example, we don't serve any juices or anything with our meals. It's only water or milk. As one thing, for example, there's more advice on serving more fruit and more selection of vegetables, and we do comply with that. So there are a lot of areas that we have compliance with. There are some things that are going to be harder to deliver than others. You've got like on our menu, we'd have to reduce our our cakes, if you like, as our dessert, which is often something that entices children to eat a school meal, and that could be quite challenging going forward. One thing that we have introduced really is 50-50 bread, which is in the regulations, but that's quite a recent addition, just to see if we can encourage children to eat what they should be eating really, rather than a pure white.
So can you say it again? Sorry, Alison. 50-50 bread? 50
whole grain, so that it's not just plain white. So the on offer previous to that was a white bread option or a wholemeal option. Lots of the children don't want to eat the brown, so it's trying to get them to eat a healthier option, but not putting them right off. So that's where the 50-50 came in. So we felt that a need to introduce that earlier rather than later, and so that's and it's gone down. We were looking at the figures today, funny enough, because of the consultation, and the numbers of bread usage has stayed quite static in comparison to a February figure that we were looking at today.
Yeah. Thanks, Alison. Yeah, so the last thing that I'd noted for us there was about a new food purchasing contract. So we have a contract in place with Castellhowell, is it Castellhowell? And you know, obviously as our main provider, you know, they will be working with us closely on getting more local food produce on the plates as well in our schools in Swansea. So under section 15, I was suggesting some ideas here of how we could move this forward through SDC and how you could guide us. And I'm just looking for some feedback from you on that, really. So I've suggested that a survey for schools to get some feedback on the current provision. Obviously, it's school holidays at the moment, so we'd look to be doing that in September and just see what our service users are actually thinking about the service. Do you want me to go through them all and then we'll
if you
them up
would,
at the end? Yeah.
Kel, please.
Then B, establishing a focus group with a selection of service users and staff. So we were thinking there maybe getting some of the children, possibly parents, some school staff, some kitchen staff, just to, you know, sort of have a talk about where we go in with the service and with the new healthy eating guidance, etc., that we have to comply with. C, then undertaking a site visit, I thought, with SDC members and providing some feedback from yourselves as well. So whether that's a school lunch that we can all attend together, or whether as councillors are on governing bodies, whether, you know, it might be something that you want to do with your own school, but we could look to arrange that, and then you can, you know, see for yourselves and taste for yourselves then what the lunch offer is like for our learners in Swansea. D, we were looking at testing a new menu for the draft healthy eating guidance with a sample of schools at the start of the autumn term, and gathering feedback from those schools to see what they think about that menu and the sort of new options that we'd have to cover. E, working with Cardiff Council to understand their recent catering review and learn from their experience. They are a similar sort of council to ourselves, with a lot of sort of you know, sort of city areas. So just trying to get a bit of feedback on what their experience has been of a service review. F, looking at a draft of a memorandum of understanding between schools and the catering service on the roles, including support for special diets. I did mention earlier the schools employ the lunchtime supervisors, whereas we employ the actual cooks and kitchen assistants. So it's thinking about how they work together, and particularly if there are children who've got allergies, you know, and how we make sure we protect those young people in our schools. G, then establishing some food waste monitoring systems. We anecdotally hear that there's waste. I think I mentioned in our previous meeting, you know, potatoes. It seemed to be something that the children aren't eating. But if we did monitor the waste a little bit more, then we could sort of see if that could influence our menu a bit more and try and reduce on that waste and the cost of the waste, of course. And then the final one, then looking at digital elements of the service to provide efficiencies and establish training where necessary. We did, as part of an efficiency measure last year, give a laptop to all of the school kitchens, so all the cooks have got one there, and that was because we've gone from a central food ordering system to each school now placing their order. There was an issue with the central server, and so we overcame that by getting these laptops out of schools. But we just want to make the best use now, really, of those laptops in schools, and also looking at the central system and whether we can streamline and digitalise that service, you know, just to make efficiencies as best we can, because obviously it makes a smoother service and reduces the cost. So that was about it really from me, and just whether, like I said, if any of those options give you food for thought. Sorry, pardon the pun. And yeah, if you've got any comments.
Couldn't help that,
Yeah, I know.
Kelly. Thank you very much, Kelly. It's a really helpful report, I think, to launch the series of meetings that we'll have this year, and I'm sure councillors are thinking of their questions and queries and will be putting their hands up in a minute or two, and in the room, of course, although we've only got Sandra, Councillor Joy here. Just to get things going, so key point about the Welsh Government's guidance, and there's emphasis in the guidance on healthy eating habits, accessing healthier meals in schools, during school hours, and making healthy choices. And what strikes me is, right, healthy eating habits, accessing, healthier food during school, fair enough, but making healthy choices, habits and choices are really challenging, aren't they? So that's the thing which lies beyond looking at catering in schools. And I tell you what, I've got to make a declaration here, right? I never had a school meal. I never had a school dinner. I know, Helen, it's shocking. I know. I was such a fussy kid, honestly. I couldn't have brought myself up. I don't know how my parents managed it, but I used to take sandwiches. I used to take packed lunches all the time, right? So how do you get a fussy eater? How do you get someone who's challenging to think about healthy eating habits and make those positive choices when they may have them in the house at home, but they may not? And in the report, we see reference to the multifaceted challenges here. So it seems to be there's lots of different offshoots from this to think about educating about diet, but about understanding vegetables, understanding fruit, tasting different things. I remember once doing, we did some fantastic nutrition stuff in Town Hill years ago, and I remember making butternut squash soup. Butternuts, what the heck is butternut squash? And that sort of thing. So is this going to be an incorporated, not part of the STC work now, but is this going to be something which the tentacles of which are going to expand right across the school curriculum almost, so that we try to raise all boats and expectations? Helen?
Yeah, those healthy habits are really encouraged through the new curriculum for Wales as part of cross-curricular work. So many children in early years, for example, get experiences to taste foods from different cultures, also foods that they are not familiar with. So there's a huge emphasis nowadays on how tasting food and healthy options is delivered as part of the curriculum. So that is very much part of ongoing curriculum work and has been strengthened recently.
Great, thanks, Helen. So we can look online now and see that Councillor Lyndon Jones was the first to raise his hand. So Lyndon?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Kelly, and everyone for the report. That's a real great basis. I think obviously healthy eating is important. I go back to when I was in school in Gorse Island Primary, and I think I mentioned it before. We used to have for school dinner. We used to have beetroot and gravy, potatoes and some sort of meat. I tell you, gosh, that was a challenge. But but healthy eating is important. I'd say to Kelly, what about local produce? How are we sourcing that produce? You're going through Howell, sorry. So what's the score with local produce? And also the Children's Commissioner reported a number of months ago now, albeit, that children were leaving school hungry after school meals. And that might be because it was the wrong choice of food, so they didn't like it. She was talking, or he was talking about the quantity of food. But that was the Children's Commissioner. So those are my main sort of opening sort of points, really.
Thanks, Lyndon.
Yeah, if I take the last point first, so when you say portion sizes and there's not enough, the children aren't eating enough, and you're right. So there's enough food there, and the portions are there, but often children choose not to take everything onto their plate, and that can cause a problem really, that they won't sort of, and they are hungry. We do all we can really to encourage the children to take, even if it's a little taste of something. In Swansea, we do have a choice menu still. Many authorities don't, because of the difficulties of serving all the children in primary, as you can imagine. And I would say to you that the proof is in eating. So it'd be very, it's probably worth you actually trying a school meal to certainly to wash away those fears of all those years ago of beetroot and gravy, I think. That's a really weird combination. As regards local supply, if you're looking at something, you have to remember that we're a very large business, if you like, and it's very important that we have due diligence. Oh, I've gone off. We have to go through our suppliers, and Castell Howell are being quite a main supplier for us, and they do source a lot of Welsh produce. The yogurt, for example, that we use is Welsh. We use a Welsh cake that we buy in that is Welsh. And in fact, there's a rather a lot coming into our sort of food chain, if you like, that people perhaps aren't fully aware of. So yes, there's obviously a lot of work to be doing. We are doing some work with Veg in Schools of late. So Food and Fun programme through the summer is using Welsh local supply through that scheme, really, as a pilot.
Thanks, Alison. We go on to the next councillor, is Councillor Mike White.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I got a couple of questions. One will lead on from the other. So you're saying we just got one supplier. So the supplier obviously got the monopoly of the schools now that they've obviously got a contract. So they can obviously dictate when price comes in as well. And secondly, I would like to know, we got a lot of schools that actually have got facilities where they can do their own cooking. What do you not think it might be an option? Plus, rather than pay a provider, we provide those facilities to their own schools, so they could perhaps bring in more of a selection, and then it might help with the cost as well. And also, it would give the children an opportunity to say what they would like on the menu as well.
Thank you, Mike. Alison? Sorry, I'm assuming Alison then. I just looked at you and said,
That's all right.
whoever.
That's absolutely fine, yeah. Sorry, Mike. So as regards sort of, we've gone through a process of tendering when we, so yes, Castell Howell supply our dry goods, our frozen goods. We have Bishops to supply our fruit and veg because they've actually tendered for the process and won the process. And that is held through Caerphilly. They hold all the main contracts and they tender on our behalf. And most of the Welsh authorities are going through Caerphilly. And Castell Howell is one, you were quite right, is one of the most major, but they have gone through. So when you mentioned price, they can't dictate price because they've gone through a tender process and have won on the basis of their prices. Obviously, there is scope for when prices increase, but they have to actually ask through Caerphilly if they can increase prices. So it's not a sort of a simple, we can charge what we want type of thing, if that's the sort of question you were asking. As regards sort of, are you saying that schools should cook their own food? Are you? Sorry, it wasn't quite.
Yes, years ago that was the process. When I went to suppliers, the schools also obviously had cooks within the schools, and they'd actually done their own cooking on site there, and they would get it. They would also get their own supplies as well. As I say, if we pay in an outside contractor, it might be an option of us looking at value for a best value for money. Plus, if you rather than give it to a main contractor, that we utilize the facilities we have in schools that they've got these facilities for cooking on site, and that would help with the cost, and also the and also what foods can obviously be provided and the choices.
Thank you, Mike. Kelly, could you put the thing up? Thanks.
Yeah, so I mentioned at the start of the report about the service level agreements. So schools do have an option at the moment that they can either buy into our catering service, they could run their own in-house provision, or go to a third party. Of course, what they do have to do is comply with those healthy eating guidelines, and they are quite strict about what you can and can't put on the plate. And indeed, I think the consultation that's out now will make it even stricter again. So it's we can't really just have people just cooking, you know, whatever they want. It does have to be really sort of rigidly adhered to. Also, of course, Alison's team are all trained members of staff in food handling, etc. So that, you know, there's a lot to think about when looking at the cooking facility in schools. You know, we are aware that a number of schools have worked with organisations to set up sort of parental groups, for example, what's the shared table? Is this? I think what it's called. But there are organisations out there that can help families to come in and do a little bit of, you know, sort of meal planning and things like that as well. So we are aware that that's gone on in some of our schools, and we've supported that, you know, in some cases as well. But then they have a slightly separate kitchen then, and teach those skills outside of the actual school lunch provision.
Is that okay, Mike?
Interesting when if we get the opportunity to go around and have a look for ourselves as a committee.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Mike. Something occurred to me then before I call in Bev next was the option that you say, I think it's called the sharing table, isn't it? Is that the unique? I think that's what it is. So we've got a community initiative now in my ward, in Cocker Ward, for example, right? So we've got a strong working links with the schools. So nothing that we hear in here with the contracts and what the schools and how the meals are provided will prevent the school coming out to the community to do a fun and enjoyable sort of cook it, eat it sort of session if the schools wanted to make use of that community facility. Is that fair to say? There wouldn't be any restrictions on that kind of activity?
No, I think that's something we would encourage for parents, you know, to come to a community facility, whether that's on site in a school or otherwise, to learn about nutrition and healthy eating, and to use maybe a third party provider or charity to facilitate that. But it does happen across our schools, and particularly in areas that need it the most, I would say, as well, in terms of educating, you know, different generations really about the importance of nutrition, and also the economy needed to consider how best to spend your money on the most nutritious food as well. But going back, just if I can, to Councillor Mike White's point in terms of each school providing their own kind of kitchen provisions and ordering in themselves, I think we've got to consider economies of scale as well in terms of procurement. And I think the efficient use of public money through a procurement route, as described by Alison in the Caerphilly model that's used by many local authorities, does provide that economy of scale. And I think that's vital that we can consider that carefully.
I'm not going to labour this, hell honest, I'm not. But so if we've got a local allotment, and you know, we grow the food there, the kids go to there and see the seeds going in and see the veg growing, and then we have a follow-up session organised by the schools where they end up eating butternut squash soup or whatever it might be. Now that wouldn't be an issue. That would be something, as you say, would be okay. It wouldn't go against the terms of the contract or anything like that, because it would be minor, wouldn't it?
So, Mike, what are you describing? If you just walk me through a scenario, and then I can provide further comment.
So if we have a primary, I'm not going to say which schools, but a primary school interested in growing, cooking, eating, and all the rest of it, so the kids could visit a community facility and see how the seeds are planted, that sort of thing, and then see the through flow of the seeds going into the ground to the actual food being made, you know, cooking it and then eating it and enjoying it, to expand their awareness and knowledge of the food from start to finish, and expand their awareness of healthy nutrition.
Absolutely. I think that would be a really good additionality. It would really complement what's offered by the school meal service. And absolutely no barriers really to doing that on a small scale in terms of additionality, but not to replace what's offered. I think some of the constraints around that is that when you grow things in schools, they often come to harvest at a time when the school isn't actually operating. So there is a minor constraint to consider there. Yeah.
Brilliant, good point as well. Yeah, of course, that Kelly.
It is something that we picked up in scrutiny last week as well, because they are looking at sort of growing, you know, and growing in schools was part of that. So obviously, you know, we do need to consider if schools are growing their own as well about soil conditions. So I raised that in scrutiny as well, because, you know, we do need to have soil testing because of the Swansea sort of industrial past as well. So we were sort of advocating raised beds if schools are going to be growing that and getting fresh soil in, etc. But yeah, but obviously, you know, when we're looking at the catering service, we do need to do things like food tracking, you know, where items have come from and things like that as well. So, but as Helen said, something outside of the usual, you know, service, you know, could be an offer the schools could make, you know, to put something on the table.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Councillor Bev Hopkins. Bev?
Right, thank you. Thank you very much, Kelly, for all this information. I think some of the suggestions you made regarding surveys and focus groups and site visits could be a way forward, and it would give a lot more people more insight into how the catering service is working and what we're providing for those schools. You did mention that you've got an awful lot of waste with potato. One thing that I've been made aware of with regard to the dinners is that we now provide it's not like the real potatoes they used to do before, where they come in, peel them. It comes in more as a product that is then made, whether they do it in a microwave or something like that, and it's not going down that really well with some of the children. And I think whether different schools are preparing it differently, I don't know. But there are a lot of the children are saying that they don't like the texture or the way the potatoes are. So is there any way of anything being done different to that type of thing, or is it a set thing that we have got to follow?
Alison?
Yeah, we have a variety of different potatoes. It's always the main conversation really with our cooks of trying to get our children to eat potatoes in a variety of different formats, from a dice to a wedge to a mashed potato. And I think that's what you're referring to, because we do been buying the mash in. And I would say too that in situations where that's being wasted, then we don't serve it. So that's the one important thing to note. And many children will want the likes of your hash browns and your sort of that type of prepared potato that they will recognise, rather than our more sort of traditional one, if you like. So and that's all part of what we're trying to do, because we don't, and yes, we would give more pasta and more rice and sort of, so and this is all part of what we want the children to eat. So important to me and important to us really is that you put a meal on the plate that the children want to eat, and not meets all the regulations, but also sort of that they are eating and having that meal in the middle of the day. So yeah, there's a lot of sort of work around potatoes, and it has been sort of an issue for quite a while, trying to get our children of Swansea to eat a potato. They're quite like roast, and they do like chips, I guess. So yeah.
Thanks very much. Go on, Kelly.
Yeah, I was going to add as well that we did have to change the potato provision, well, and some other provision, isn't it, when the waste regulations change as well, because we can't dispose as easily now of the peelings, potato peelings. So it, you know, it has sort of forced a change in the menu as well, to having to buy pre-prepared or, you know, ready sort of frozen products, which also, of course, has a knock-on effect to the equipment we have in the kitchen. So instead of having potato peelers, now we need more freezers and things, for example. But again, you know, that's something that's sort of forced on us by legislation.
Thanks, Kel. There's something wrong with potatoes and cakes. I mean, my life is shattered here. I can't believe this is very upsetting. Are we looking at significant cost implications in the waste side of things then with these regulations? And is the Welsh Government going to foot the bill? Do we know yet?
As part of the consultation, it's very important that it's like a 50-50 loaf of bread for us to buy is 15 pence more per loaf, and you are all thinking that's not a lot of money, but when you're serving as much bread as us, it's actually nearly £60,000 over a year. So everything is big for us. So yes, there is cost implications. Yes, it has to be mentioned in the consultation, and most authorities are doing that. So to make sure that hopefully we are telling the Welsh Government. So they're talking about sort of with the fruit is making sure that there is a full portion of fruit available as well as the pudding, and that's an extra cost. And you've got to make sure that the children want, are going to eat it as well, isn't it? It's very important that whatever you're giving them, they're going to eat, but also that the money is there to support that.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I just say as well that eating comes first, doesn't it, with children? My eldest child was as fussy as I was when he was trying to make him eat anything was murderously difficult when he was little. So I can see where the Welsh Government is going. I can understand Rosia Cifuentes, the Children's Commissioner, drive with her report. I can see Public Health Wales. I can understand this drive. That child needs to eat first and foremost, and therefore develop healthily, increase their nutrition and avoid eating disorders. I mean, let's get the balance right, I think would be something to be urged. Helen?
Yeah, when the waste regulations came in last April for schools and other settings across the council, there was no funding stream available to schools per se, and I think that's true to say about our central catering service as well. So I'm getting nods from colleagues. So there was no extra money for the different types of bins required, for example.
Right, okay, I suspected that's what we'd be looking at. So we need to be really mindful of this. I mean, we haven't got a bottomless, a supply of money. And if additional costs come in, well, something else we're going to have to give somewhere else, wouldn't it? So we need to be really very careful about this. Can I ask Councillor Jardine, Yvonne?
Thanks, Chair. I would just start by thanking Kelly and everyone else for the report. And that what I'm going to say, it's a bit of a observation and a couple of questions, and it is not meant to be a criticism at all. The thing is, I feel that whatever we do, whatever Kelly and the team does, we're not going to be able to satisfy everyone, and there'll always be those that don't fit in, because there's maybe Mike says and myself, there are lots of things that people say you eat with your eyes. I look at, and it's just never going to happen. And I'm still a bit like that. But for the healthy eating and the habits, I feel that we're now as a society expect the schools to do this, that, and the other. But often children come to school with those habits already in place with their eating. And so then it's quite a bit of a struggle for the schools to change those habits. I'm not saying we shouldn't try, but it's difficult to change those habits. And it's very difficult to impose healthy eating, or to encourage healthy eating, not impose, when you go home and that's not what you find at home. And the cost also for a lot of families mean it's just not going to happen. But last year I went to one of the comps, I won't say which one, and really I didn't think much of the food. And the explanation was that each day, because of the diet and the vitamins and the 5 healthy whatever, a set meals coming each day. And there were days when there's some things the children just won't, so that it tends to go into the bin. And one of the teachers was saying because it's not, and I'm not saying we should just cater to the children, but as Mike just said, there's a cost. And if we are trying to, I think healthy eating needs to start earlier. And I'm going to leave it there. And I often feel, should we be, to a bit more of an extent, not just tapping into the parents, but dealing especially with young parents before their children get to school, so that the children come with that healthy eating and the habit of eating basically what's in front of you. That's it really. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Yvonne. Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think that's part of what the Universal Free School Meal offer was trying to do as well, is to try and encourage all the learners to come and sit around a table together, have that social experience, use cutlery, to eat their meals, etc., and try different food. It only rolled out in September 2024, so I suppose it's sort of, we'll have to wait and see if that does sort of work and does give those different habits to the children. But you are right, it is one meal a day out of a number of meals that they'll potentially have in that week. So it is going to be, difficult to offer. I know when you mentioned about the school with the waste, the team do monitor what gets sold as well, and does change the menu. If things aren't popular, we will look to take them off the menu, put things back on. But like I said, we are quite constrained with the health eating guidance. I think that the new guidance is looking at things like less salt and less cheese, and it does potentially make it a less attractive offer. But as Alison said, the consultation is still open if anybody wants to comment individually, or as a group. It is there, for people to comment back on about the implications on budget and children eating, basically.
Thanks, Kelly. So it's not just potatoes and cakes; it's cheese as well. I'll be about 8.5 stone if I got to toe this line. Looking online first. Sorry, Sandra. Lyndon Jones, Councillor Lyndon Jones, please.
Great, fine. Thanks, Chair. No, I agree with the points that Mike and Yvonne and Bev have made. I'm surprised about the potatoes though, and ending up by having to get frozen potato. Very often they taste like rubber, so no wonder the children are leaving it. And I think we do need to have a look at this. And I think if we go into the kitchens, I think we need to go in almost unannounced. Otherwise, we'll end up by having delicious potatoes served us, and everybody else has stuff for the rest of the week. But I think we do need to look at that. And I think Mike mentioned about touched on cookery in schools, and I raised this. We did a session in education scrutiny a while ago. What was happening with cookery in schools? Because if I was behind somebody in Tesco's and they were literally buying all these ready meals, and a lot of people don't know how to cook, and yet they learned in school how to cook. And I think if we're going to talk about the cost of living crisis, we need to get people learning how to cook again, and they'll get more nutritious food, get used to having nutritious food and feeding their families more nutritious food, which goes on to a point that Yvonne made, really. So that starts sort of early, really, in training them in schools. So we have a duty as well on cookery in schools, teaching people how to cook.
I think you brought a few important strands together there, Lyndon, and I wonder, sometimes I refer to colleagues in Child and Family Social Services, especially when we come to issues of multiple deprivation and vulnerability, and I know that they do some fantastic work in engaging families with cookery skills and preparing and budgeting, and actually taking them sometimes around the supermarket instead of buying 30 litres of Coke and tons of chocolate, just introducing them to the vegetable aisle and showing them what pasta is, for example. And that it taps into the same kind of, the same area, perhaps. So we are looking into the room. I do apologise, Sandra, we've been waiting for a long time. Councillor Joy.
That's all right, thank you. First of all, I mean, having had first-hand experience, I can't imagine what the change must be. If you've had to increase by about 6,000 meals in order to manage this process, my first question is has the budget increased proportionally in order to support you to do this? And also, given the waste management issues now that have been added to all of this, has the budget increased to allow for the waste management issues for you to do this?
Welsh Government have given more per meal, I guess, for the universal free school meals, but it's still not enough. We did do quite a lot of change when we first introduced each year group as we bring them in, trying to make what we do in our kitchens to cope with the numbers less labour intensive, so that we haven't got to employ as many staff. So trying to look at manage that cost, if you like, to make sure we're trying to be as efficient as possible, but still maintaining costs as closely as we can. And still at the foremost of here is sort of serving a quality meal, really, on the plate that the children will eat. And I think that's the key to it all, really, isn't it? As regards sort of the waste costs, that came and hit us as well. So for us and for schools overnight, that was a big change, really. And another cost. And you are quite right. I mean, you know, where do you cope with all these costs, and we can manage as well as we possibly can, which we do, to try and contain the costs. But the more things that come, the more costs that hit our bottom line, really.
And I think that's my concern, is because, of course, if you're having to deal with that kind of budgeting, what you don't want it to do is to hit the meal that the children are getting at the end of the day, you know, and that's where I'd be particularly concerned. How do you cope with because you've got to feed every child, how do you cope with things like diabetics and all of those medical meals, as I call them? Are they accounted for, or do you design that one size fits all meal to cater for those children?
Diets are a big issue. So prior to universal free school meals, many mums and dads and guardians perhaps wouldn't have sent their child into school if they had a special diet. But as an entitlement comes, so an entitlement to have that meal certainly is very much there. So we've seen quite a rise in these diets. It's not enough for, I suppose, for parents or guardians to come in to say my child should be eating this, that and the other. They have to be supported by some kind of referral, so that we can, and we do deliver on those. And we have got some schools have a lot of different diets and some don't, you know, so we cater for all. Monica deals quite closely with the paediatric dietitians around sort of diabetics, because of course all the carb counts have to be put in. So most definitely I think we've seen a big rise in that side of the business, and have to cope with it because we have to deliver that meal on the plate, really.
Thanks, Alison. Kelly?
Yeah, and I think that was something that I'd like to perhaps get out of this STC is something where we can make a statement for parents on what we are able to offer and what we're not able to offer, because we haven't really got that there at the moment. You know, you mentioned perhaps you were a fuss eater as a child. You know, we can't accommodate within budget constraints that we've got fuss eaters, but obviously we will, as Alison said, accommodate medical needs where there is that, you know, medical referral for that diet.
Excellent. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, I think that it's absolutely spot on to focus on these key issues, and to make sure that we never take away parental responsibility in law, but the responsibility for that child is with the parents, and it's important for us to step with the parents and not, in a sense, allow any parents to abdicate their own responsibility for their children because there's an entitlement. So it's important for us to say, look, this is what we can provide. This is what we can do for all of our, I keep saying about 38,000 children in schools in Swansea, something like that. This is what we provide, but it's a two-way street, and parents need to engage positively with the process of change. Sandra?
My other question, completely different, was on portion sizes. Is the portion size for a 7-year-old the same as for a 15-year-old, or does that change as they get older?
That's a very interesting one. So in our primary schools, as set at the moment, there is the same size portion for an infant child as a junior child. Our secondary is slightly different, so they do have a larger portion there. So across our primaries, the part of the new regulations, and it is proposed that an infant child will have a smaller portion to a junior child, because you've got a 5-year-old eating the same meal as 11-year-old, and we all know that 11-year-old will eat a lot more than a 5-year-old. and they're entitled to have that same portion. So at the moment, and that's part of the new regulations. So it'd be interesting to see how that, if that is consulted on and actually goes forward. So it is an interesting one. And in our comprehensives, we do have a larger portion.
Okay, lovely, thank you. I can't see anyone else indicating online. So can I ask committee members to concentrate on section 16? Are we content to take the approach which is outlined in section 16 with the key areas that Kelly has outlined? Does that seem to be a sensible structure for us? And of course, Kelly, as always, will take into account the kinds of comments that we've fed in today. Committee, are we content? Yes, thank you, Sandra. Okay, yes, lovely. I can see hands going up and a pen. Thank you, Mike. Excellent. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. Can I thank Kelly for that full and detailed report to kick off this very important area of work for us this year? And can I in particular thank Alison, Monica and the team for, as Sandra said then, for the efforts that you put in and in coping with what seems to me to be an impossible situation often in feeding so many hungry mouths in Swansea schools. Thank you very much and thanks for coming today. So we move on in the agenda to number 5, which is the work plan. That's attached on page 6 at the back of the report. And we can see that we head in for sunshine and holidays. We've already seen the exodus that we referred to last time for Swansea teachers going away. Our next meeting will be about reading and numeracy, and it will be on the 10th of September 2025. So that is it. I don't think anybody is indicating, no, there's no further comments. Robert Smith, Councillor Robert Smith, Cabinet Member, do you want to add anything to close the meeting, Robert?
No, just to thank members for their input this afternoon. I think we've had a very thorough and interesting discussion. Found out a lot about people's own eating habits as well. But no, I think, we need to get to grips with this issue and get the right balance between all the different considerations that have been brought up by committee members this afternoon. So thank the committee and also echo your comments to the officers for the preparation that's gone in to make this meeting possible, Chair. So appreciate that.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Mike White.
Yes, can I just give my apologies now for the next meeting, Chair? I will be on holiday. Thank you.
Lovely, thanks, Mike. We'll make a note. So I'm going to the supermarket now to buy some gravy and beetroot for my tea, Linda, and you'll be glad to hear. And on that note, I will close the meeting. Thank you all very much for your attendance.
Bye.